Ruth is who we opened up with last week, and we are studying Ruth throughout the month of June, which was pretty good. So we're going to be continuing on with that. But hope everyone had a decent week. Everyone have a solid week? Decent, solid, kind of terrible? It can't be terrible. You're all out of school, all right? You literally can't say it's been bad. It's been all right. Huh?
Go home.
Go home.
Yes, you go home. What?
What?
Go home.
You want me to go home?
Don't come back. Go.
You guys are like the weirdest people literally to have ever come into this place.
Ashton, we're not moving you permission.
I asked, hold on. Where did this, I didn't even know we hated each other. I'm so confused. This would be one thing if we just were like mortal rivals.
We're not moving to
where,
the new church yet, Ashton.
Oh, see, you guys are so awkward. That didn't even make sense either. I don't know what to do right now. You know what? Normally I invite y'all to come up to the front row. Just leave it. This is dangerous up here. I don't know what is going on with these two fools. Morgan, yes? How's
I met a new friend.
You met a new friend? Who is it?
Yes. His name is Alex.
Oh, you say his name?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is he the one who hurt your ankle?
No.
Is this code? Do we need to go beat up Alex? We need to beat up Alex. We got you, Morgan. Don't worry. Hey.
It's like 50.
At my house, 10 p.m. tonight, boys. We ride at dawn. We'll get him. Don't you worry. We got him, Morgan. Met a new friend. That's cute. My dog tore up my chair today. Or not today. What was it? Yesterday? Yeah. Our dog's terrible. We decided, we had a solid week where we're just going to leave him out of the cage and see how he does in the house. And he did pretty well. We'd always hold it, never went to the bathroom, and then he just destroyed our furniture yesterday. We're just like, yep, you're going back to the pound. So we're going to take it. No, we're not going to do that. So he just tore up the chair, and I was very sad. I was like, why do you like this? It is a nice chair. I wish I could say it's a nice dog so it cancels out, but no, I'll take the chair. I mean, this dog's so annoying. He just ripped up that chair. I'm like, the chair was more expensive than the dog. Put that into perspective. He tore up the arm of the chair. I'd rather have him just lose a leg. Be like, all right, we can work with this. We can work with his dog. We can name him Skip. I'm done. All right, here we go. We're just going to continue on. Ruth. Ruth is who we're talking about. Ruth is who we're talking about. Does anyone remember what we talked about Ruth last week? Besides the fact that Morgan thinks she's ugly, what do we know about Ruth? Anyone know? I'm not even lying, people. I literally said, does anyone know who Ruth is in the Bible? Who's heard of Ruth? Anyone? Anyone ever heard of Ruth? JV, have you ever heard of Ruth?
I feel like I have.
I feel like I have. It's like I knew a girl in third grade.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, that's right. So Morgan was the only one who raised her hand I definitely know something about Ruth. And I was like, all right, Ruth, what do we know? What do we know about Ruth? She's like, she's ugly. I'm like, okay. All right, Morgan, we're on a hot streak. No. Ruth is not ugly. Well, maybe she was. I don't have a picture Bible. All I know is Leah was the one who we talked about in the month of February, who Jacob said that she wasn't pleasing to look at. That was the one that we described as ugly. But Morgan just thinks if one woman in the Bible is ugly, clearly all of them have to be. So that's Morgan's line of thought. Yes. Set the tone. And you know what? That is exactly how tonight's going. Doesn't this just make sense? Doesn't this just make sense? This is just so, it's just so good. Is it? Do we know what happened, Sean? We just shoot those things back up? He's like, I may have fallen on him. There we go. Straight up. No, if that would have been the most graceful way lights have gone out. That was just slowly dimmed. I don't know what's going on. This is one of those days. Well, I have these up here. This has been an interesting week. My mother-in-law got me this shirt. It's a Reese's shirt, but it says Jesus on it. Isn't that cute? It's a cute little Jesus shirt. So this is like what all the youth pastors wore back in the 90s, all right? This is what they all wore. And then we got these shoes in the mail for the guy who lived in the house before us. And so then we're like, hey, we got shoes, and we don't know what to do with them. And so then they said, well, you can't return them, so you just got to keep them or throw them out. And I'm like, shoot, okay. So we opened up these shoes. They're 11 and a half, and they're killing my feet, which is why I could not wear them the whole day. I wore them halfway through. Hold on. You just started off service saying, go home, no one likes you. And I was like, oh, give me your shoes. So this is just what I'm saying. This is what the typical, sit down, boy. You ain't getting this shit. What typical youth pastor look like. Now all I have to do This kills my big toe. These are 11 and a halves. These are,
I can wear 11.
son, you're like size 6. Don't even tell me you're
I can
feet
wear
big.
11.
So this is a little rough. This is a little rough. The only one who might fit these is Javion. This is like the only one who can walk out of it. You would fit these, Cody? Would you wear these, Cody?
Yes.
All right, Cody, come take these, Cody. I'm just done with these. Go ahead, Cody. Congratulations.
I wear 8.
These are $60 shoes.
I love how he went up there and just took them.
What do you think you're doing? I want you to legitimately think that you're going to get these shoes. You think you're going to get these shoes? You know you lied to yourself. Go ahead, Cody. Take these shoes. There you go. Well done. That is what I tried going with the full youth pastor look this entire day, and my big toe was almost bleeding like by noon. I could not do it. I'm like, these shoes are terrible. So that's how my week's been. But make sure you don't waste your summer, all right? Hopefully your week's going well. If it hasn't, make sure you don't stay in summer school too long, because clearly all of you are in there at this point. So make sure you pass, make sure you do better, and make sure you still have fun, all right? That's what we're doing. So this week with Ruth, we are talking about what chapter, Javion? Shot in the dark.
3.
So close. 2. 2 is what we're talking about.
I was actually
2 is what we're talking about. Chapter 2 of Ruth is what we are discussing. Last week we discussed chapter 1. This week we're discussing chapter 2. And next week we're discussing chapter
3.
No, we'll be gone. All right, so we're not going to be discussing chapter 2. We'll be gone to Myrtle Beach. You guys pay attention so well. Morgan's like, we're still talking about Moses, right? Yeah? Oh my God. This is such a weird day, man. This is such a freaking weird day. Ruth chapter 2 is what we will be studying. Now, with studying the second chapter of Ruth, we are studying one sole topic in the book of Ruth. Does anyone remember what that topic was from last week? In Ruth chapter 1, what was the main topic we talked about? It's a characteristic of God. We talked about a characteristic. What did you think? No, I think you got it right. I'm just surprised. What did you say? The loyalty of God. Look at Morgan. Yes, the loyalty of God. That is what we discussed. The whole book of Ruth talks about the loyalty of God. It doesn't talk about a relationship story, all right? If you've ever heard of the relationship between Ruth and Boaz, that's in this book. That is the Ruth we are talking about. We talked about last week that this is not a little bachelor story. This is not what this book was meant for. Not to say that men can't be like Boaz or women shouldn't be like Ruth. I guarantee you there are some godly characteristics in both of them. But if you only look at this book as a relationship book, you will miss everything that God wants to say to you. And so the whole story of Ruth's life is not that type of story. It is not to gloat over Ruth's loyalty. It is to show God's ability to redeem his people because he is loyal. That is what we see all throughout the Bible, and that is what we especially see in Ruth's story. As a matter of fact, the doctor that we study so often as we go throughout these biographical studies, Mr. Warren Wiersbe, says this about the book of Ruth when it comes to Naomi and to Ruth. He says, God's purpose in providence is not to make us comfortable, but to make us conformed to the image of his Son. That is what he says when he talks about the book of Ruth. And the reason why he says this is because there are so many times that hardship comes against Ruth and comes against Naomi where they say, you know what? God's clearly against us. I don't know what to do. And Warren Wiersbe is saying these are the moments where God is challenging them, not because he doesn't want them to be comfortable, not because he is punishing them, but because he is changing them to be more like Jesus. And so last week we saw how nothing can take away from God's loyalty in chapter 1. That is what we discussed last week. Nothing can take away from his loyalty. And tonight we will be seeing his loyalty on display in chapter 2. And now I do want to say that loyalty is always a fun thing to discuss when talking about the book of Ruth or when talking about our own lives in that matter, because we always want to lift up people who have been loyal to us. If you were at small group this past Sunday in middle school or in high school, we talked about what is or who is the greatest, most loyal person that you know. If you would pick one person who you would say, this is the most loyal person that I know, who would that be? And we immediately gave off our answers. But then, at the same time, we were also able to say, and we didn't go over this, but I'm willing to bet we would have a few, we would immediately know the people who were the least loyal to us. Because those people stick with us as well, whether we like to admit it or not. But one thing we very rarely ask ourselves is how loyal are we to other people? How loyal are we? If we were to take those people in our lives that have ever known us and ask us, how loyal am I? What would be the response we got? And right away, I think a lot of you would be like, I think I'd get a pretty good report back. And that's mainly because you're thinking of the people who are in your life right now. When in reality, the people who aren't in your life are probably the ones who aren't in your life because you may not have been loyal to that person. And so, I'm not saying that no one in this room is loyal. I'm not saying that no one in this room knows how to be loyal. But I think when it comes to loyalty, we all give ourselves a bit much more credit than we honestly deserve. And so despite how loyal you may be, and despite how loyal all of us may be to the eyes of the world, we can see what perfect loyalty looks like by looking at God's loyalty to his people. That is what perfect loyalty looks like. Because if there's anyone who should have given up on the human race, it is God. And if you can't understand that or don't believe that, read the Old Testament and then get back to me. If there's anyone who should have given up on the human race as a whole, it is God, but he remained loyal to his word. And we will see how he remains loyal to his word in Ruth chapter 2, starting off with verses 2 through 3. This is what it says. It says, And Ruth the Moabitess, because she's a woman, Moabitess said to Naomi, Please let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after one in whose sight I may find favor. And she said to her, Go, my daughter. So she departed and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to the portion of the field belonging to Boaz, who was in the family of Elimelech. What a name. What a name. Now, first off, who knows what the word glean means? Anyone? When it says you go to a field and you glean, what does it mean? Because I had no idea approximately 3 days ago what this word meant. I had no idea. Morgan, you got it? It's not ugly. It doesn't mean ugly. What do you think it means? Huh? Grain?
Pray.
Pray. No, it doesn't mean pray. It doesn't mean go to a field and pray. Go to a field and glean. What does that mean? I don't think I know. Glean, quite simply, means to gather grain. That is what it means. If you're going to a field, you are gathering the crops and gathering the field that was left behind. And the reason why it is called glean, and the reason why it says go do this, is because this was a practice that you will see take place in the Old Testament. Because this was one of the 613 laws listed in the first 5 books of the Bible. God literally put into play in the book of Deuteronomy and said that farmers literally, once they had all their crops grow and they got done picking their crops, they couldn't go back to pick up what they missed or pick up what they left behind. They had to leave it for the poor people who are going to come in after them, which is an amazing rule, because God is showing that, yes, you should be able to earn what you deserve, but at the same time, God was showing, I have a heart for all of my people. Even those who are poor, who cannot afford anything, I will find a way to provide for them. And so one of the rules that he came up with was farmers were not allowed to go back and pick up all the crops. They had to leave some behind for the poor people. And so Ruth and Naomi, with both of their husbands dead, this is what they are. They are 100% poor. And so she says, let me go out and try and glean and pick up some crops after the farmers to see if I can get us some food. And then Ruth does this and stumbles upon a man named Boaz. This is where we first get introduced to this man. And what is the first thing we are told about Boaz? It says right at the end of verse 3 that Boaz was of the family of Elimelech. Does anyone from last week know who Elimelech was? What a great name. Who was Elimelech? We know that he's got a very interesting and weird name, so he died in chapter 1. That is literally what we talk about. Every man with a name that was hard to pronounce passed away in the first 5 verses of chapter 1. Sounds awkward? Definitely happened. Who was Elimelech married to? Ruth, Naomi, or Orpah? Which one? What do you think, Morgan? Huh? Orpah. No. Naomi or Ruth? Who was Elimelech married to? Naomi or Ruth? Ashton.
Was it Wyoming?
Was it Wyoming? Naomi.
Yes.
No,
Oh,
Naomi.
that.
Naomi? Yes. Naomi was married to Elimelech. So Naomi was the mother-in-law and is the mother-in-law of Ruth and Orpah. So the reason why this is important is because they found someone related to Elimelech. Now, this is, if you didn't get this one, you're definitely not going to get this one. Why is this such a critical thing to be able to find someone who is not just a man, but found someone who is related to Elimelech? Does anyone know the answer to this? Let me ask you this. What were the 2 main reasons why it was extremely bad to not have a man in the house back in this day? We talked about this last week and this morning on Sunday. Why is it extremely bad to not have a man in the house back in the day? Morgan, you know?
Because you can't do anything.
You can't do anything. Kind
That's
of.
kind of what I mean, but like...
Kind of.
You
There were
can't
2
own
main
anything.
reasons. You can't what?
You can't own anything, you can't make any money.
Kind of. The money part's there. Provide. There's no one to provide for you. That was one reason. What is the other thing you need a man for? What can you literally not make if you don't have a man?
A child.
A child, yes. A child. There is no way to carry on the family line. So, the two big main reasons you needed a man in the household was because there was no one to provide for you, and there was no one to carry on your family line. And so if Ruth finds favor in Boaz when she is gleaning through his field, she doesn't just find someone who can provide for a family, but because he is related to Elimelech, she literally finds someone who can provide and carry on the exact same family line that just passed away, which is implausible news. This is amazing news for someone to be able to say, all three husbands have passed. There is literally no way we can carry on this family line, and yet here comes someone who just happened to be related to Elimelech. Not only is there someone who can provide for these people, but there is someone who can carry on the family line of the person you were originally married to. And this is just amazing because this again shows the amazing sovereignty of God's redemption. The amazing sovereignty of God's redemption. It is incredibly encouraging because as silly as this may sound, whenever anything happens in life, we always can remember that God will never forget to redeem the redeemed. He will never forget to save his children. No matter what you are going through, no matter what is taking place, God will not forget to save you. Just as we discussed last week, it doesn't matter if we see a way forward or not, God will redeem his children, period. And so the next part where we get to look at is verses 10 through 11. And in this passage, we see here that Ruth has just found out that she has indeed found favor from Boaz to glean in his field. And this is Ruth's response when Boaz allows her to do this. It says, "Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, 'Why have I found favor in your sight, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?' Boaz replied to her, 'All that you have done for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband has been fully reported to me, and how you left your father and your mother in the land of your birth and came to a people that you did not previously know.'" This is an amazing, amazing realization from both Boaz and Ruth. Because Ruth falls down, acknowledges Boaz, not just for what he has done, but for who he is. And what does he respond with? He doesn't say, "I notice you because of all the riches that you have." He doesn't say, "I notice you because I'm currently open and looking for someone to marry." He doesn't say, "I notice you because of X, Y, and Z." He said, "I noticed you because of your loyalty to your family. I noticed because even when your husband passed and even when your mother-in-law husband passed, you remained loyal to your family." And it's amazing because Ruth at any point could have thrown the biggest pity party and it would have been totally justified. If there's anyone who can say, "Please give me food, my entire family died," it is Ruth. That is a solid reason to throw a pity party and think that people ought to show pity for you because of everything that you've gone through. But Ruth doesn't do that. She doesn't focus on her absence. She focuses on Boaz's abundance. She doesn't look to everything that she has lost. She looked to everything that God could bless and give her through Boaz. And what a beautiful picture of how we should approach God. Yes, we know we can go and lament and complain and let our frustrations be made known to God. We talked about that last week and throughout the month when we talked about David. We've talked about this. But at the end of the day, may we not only come to God with a woe is me type of attitude, but may we come to God and say, "God, I focus on what you have an abundance of because I know you can provide a way for me." May we not come to God and say, "God, pity me, look at my life, look how terrible it is," like coming to God and saying, "Woe is me," because of everything that is taking place. Don't do that. Don't come to God and be like, "There's no point in trying in life because I can't see a way forward." Don't be like Morgan at 9 Square, all right? We need to pursue. We need to pursue what God has for us, and that means doing what God has planned even when we don't see a way forward. Don't be like that. Come to God and put your hope in Him as well. Do not just be loyal in bringing your problems to God. Be loyal in putting your hope in Him as well. There are two major things our loyalty must show, and it must show that we are not just putting our loyalty in the problems that we have, but we must be loyal in finding the hope that God provides. Last passage we have is verses 19 through 20, and this is where Ruth comes and shows her story to Naomi. Of all the food that she's gathered, she comes back to Naomi and says this to her mother-in-law. It says, her mother-in-law then said to her, "Where did you glean today, and where did you work? May he who took notice of you be blessed." So she told her mother-in-law whom she had worked and said, "The name of the man with whom I work today is Boaz." Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed of the Lord, who has not withdrawn his kindness to the living and to the dead." And again Naomi said to her, "The man is our relative. He is one of our closest relatives." This entire situation did not just fill Ruth with hope, but filled Naomi with an abundance of hope as well. And it is a hope that they have found a provider and a man to carry on their family line. And this seems really out of place here when you read Naomi's response, because once you have read chapter 1 and once you read chapter 2, it looks like we see two different versions of Naomi. We see two immediate different versions of Naomi. If you were here last week, you know this is not the grateful Naomi that we were introduced to. Because what is Naomi's reaction back in chapter 1 when everyone's husband passes? Literally in verse 13, Naomi tells her daughter-in-laws, "The hand of the Lord is clearly against me, so leave me so I can die." That is Naomi's response. Go find other men, other cultures, and other gods to worship, because the God I serve clearly does not want me to succeed. That is what she concludes with. And then, what do we see right here, one chapter later? What does she say about God? She says, "The Lord has not withdrawn his kindness to the living or to the dead." One extreme to the other. God hates me, and now God never takes away his kindness towards me. In just one chapter, a complete change. Now here's the question. Was Naomi right? Was Naomi right in her assumption about God? Was God against her and then just randomly changed his mind and decided to help her out? Was that God's way? No. Not even close. That was not it. God's mind was not changed. Naomi's was. God's plan did not change. Naomi's plans changed. God didn't have a wrong view of Naomi's problem. Naomi had a wrong view of God. That is what we must see. God didn't leave her in chapter 1, even though that's what she thought. God was with her the entire time. God's loyalty always leads the redeemed back to the Redeemer. That is what we see through Naomi and Ruth's life, is that God's loyalty will continue to lead the redeemed back to the Redeemer. It leads God's children right back to God. It isn't up to us to figure out how and when God will redeem us and how and when he'll deliver us. We just need to always remember that he is loyal to his promises and that he will redeem his people. That is what we must keep in mind. And so this is what I want to encourage and challenge each of you with today as we close. I want to challenge you and remind you that God's loyalty, even in the midst of the unknown, is 100% reliable. And so this week, pray over the biggest stresses of your life. Pray this week over them, but don't throw a pity party. Don't go to God and express why he should just show all the grace in the world to you because you can be more dramatic than the next person. That's not the goal. Go to God in the midst of your biggest stresses, and just like Ruth, despite whatever's going on, know that God is loyal and thank him that he never backs down from his promises. As hard as it is, thanking God in the midst of your trial and in the midst of your problem proves that we know the loyalty of God is unshakable. And when we do this, we can see our faith remain firm on our foundation so that we don't get tossed around by the storms of life that come our way. And so that is what we are going to be doing this evening. I said we're going to close by praying, but it's going to be a little different than what we normally do as well. Because this time, instead of just praying for the person next to us or praying for our requests that we're going to lift up, I still want to go around and ask a few questions, but I want us to thank God regardless of what is going on in our life and our circumstance right now. I want us to list the hardest thing we're going through, but at the end of the day, I want us to thank God that even though it's difficult, even though there's a lot of stress, even though there may be a bunch of reasons why we could throw a pity party and why we can be dramatic, may we thank God that he is loyal and his promises never fail.